You wouldn't survive your first night, not because you aren't brave, not because you aren't intelligent, but because you were never built for that world. Imagine opening your eyes, not to the sound of an alarm, but to the sound of something watching you, something you can't see, something that knows exactly where you are. 30,000 years ago, that wasn't a nightmare, that was morning. Every sunrise began with the same silent question. Would you still be alive by sunset? Because this wasn't a world built for humans. It was a world ruled by predators, lions, leopards, hyenas, massive snakes hidden beneath the grass. Even the darkness itself could become a hunter, and by every rule of evolution, humans should have disappeared. We weren't the fastest, we weren't the strongest, we couldn't outrun a wolf, we couldn't overpower a bear, we didn't have claws, we didn't have fangs, we didn't even have thick skin. Everything about the human body says, we should have become another extinct species. And yet, something impossible happened. The species that should have become prey became the one that outlived almost every predator that once hunted it. How? Was it because we became stronger? No. Faster? Not even close. So what changed? What did our ancestors discover that turned the weakest creature on the landscape into the one that would eventually conquer every continent on Earth? The answer didn't begin with bigger muscles. It began with one decision. That changed the future of humanity forever. The first enemy wasn't the lion, it wasn't the leopard, and it wasn't the hyena. It was fear. Imagine standing in complete silence, watching the tall grass move. You don't know what's inside it. Maybe it's the wind. Maybe it isn't. If you run, you might run straight toward danger. If you stay, whatever is hiding might already be stalking you. For our ancestors, this wasn't imagination. It was survival. Every decision carried a cost. One wrong step, one moment of panic, could be the last mistake you ever made. But here's something strange. Predators weren't fearless either. A lion doesn't attack everything it sees. Neither does a leopard. Every hunt carries a risk. A broken leg, a deep wound, or a failed attack could mean starvation. That changes everything. Because survival wasn't about being stronger than a predator. It was about convincing the predator that attacking you wasn't worth the risk. And this is where humans did something no other animal had ever done. Instead of growing sharper teeth, we changed the rules of the game. Not with bigger muscles, not with incredible speed, but with something no predator could understand. Planning. Imagine a lone human walking across the landscape. Easy prey. Now imagine that same human surrounded by 10 others, watching each other's backs, communicating without words, moving as one. Suddenly, the weakest creature on the landscape didn't look so weak anymore. And that was only the beginning, because the greatest weapon humans ever created wasn't a spear, it was an idea. The greatest weapon humans ever created wasn't a spear, it was an idea. Imagine watching a leopard disappear into the tall grass. Most animals would simply walk away and hope they never crossed paths again. Humans did something different. They remembered. They remembered where it happened, what time of day it happened, which direction the predator came from, and perhaps most importantly, they told everyone else. That changed everything. One dangerous encounter no longer protected just one survivor. It protected the entire group. Knowledge became something no predator could steal. Every mistake became a lesson. Every lesson made the next generation a little harder to kill. And that's when evolution took an unexpected turn. Humans stopped relying only on instinct. They began relying on experience. A child didn't need to face a lion to learn how dangerous one could be. They could learn by listening. A hunter didn't need to discover every safe path alone. Someone else had already walked it. Every story shared around a campfire, every warning passed from one generation to the next, made humans stronger without changing a single bone in the human body. But memory alone wasn't enough. Because no matter how much you knew, you still couldn't outrun a lion. You still couldn't fight a leopard with your bare hands. So humans made another extraordinary discovery. They realized one person couldn't defeat a predator, perhaps 10 people could, and together, they created something the natural world had almost never seen before. Not the strongest animal, not the fastest, but the most coordinated. And suddenly, the hunters were no longer facing one frightened human. They were facing a team that planned, communicated, protected one another, and refused to fight alone. That single idea may have saved our species. But even teamwork had one terrifying weakness, because when the sun disappeared, everything changed. There came a moment when humans stopped living like prey, not because predators disappeared, but because humans began predicting them. Imagine waking before sunrise. No one says a word, yet everyone already knows the plan. One group will search for fresh tracks, another will gather food nearby, others will stay behind to protect the children. This wasn't instinct, it was strategy, and strategy changed everything. A lion could overpower one human, but it couldn't understand a trap. A leopard could hide in the grass, but it couldn't predict 10 people working together. For the first time, humans weren't simply surviving each day, they were preparing for tomorrow. They remembered where predators hunted, they avoided dangerous valleys, they returned to places where food was plentiful. Every season, every river, every migration became part of an invisible map carried inside the human mind. No claws, no fangs. Yet humans possessed something far more powerful: the ability to imagine the future before it happened. And once a species can prepare for tomorrow, it becomes almost impossible to surprise. That single ability changed the balance between humans and every predator that shared the earth with them. But humanity's greatest victory was still to come, because eventually, the hunters began to fear us. Thousands of years passed. The lions were still fast. The leopards were still silent. The wolves still hunted in packs. Nothing about the predators had changed. The species that changed was us. Generation after generation, our ancestors didn't inherit sharper claws. They inherited better ideas. Every mistake became a lesson. Every lesson became a story. Every story made the next generation a little harder to defeat. That is how humans survived. Not through strength, but through knowledge. Not by becoming fearless, but by learning when to be afraid and what to do about it. Today, when you lock your front door before going to sleep, when you warn someone about a dangerous road, when you teach a child something you learned the hard way, you're repeating a habit that began hundreds of thousands of years ago. The instinct to protect one another, to share knowledge, to prepare for danger before it arrives. Those habits helped a fragile species survive a world filled with creatures far stronger than itself. Perhaps the greatest mystery isn't how humans survived Earth's deadliest predators. Perhaps it's this: the greatest weapon humanity ever possessed was never hidden in a spear. It was hidden inside the human mind. And that weapon changed the world forever.